and welcome to Centrum's Acoustic Blues Workshop Blues Talks. I'm your host, Mark Puryear, and today we have some really wonderful guests who have been teaching here at Centrum Acoustic Blues Workshop this week. To my right is Shari, Kane, acoustic guitar player and master of the fingerstyle blues, and to her right is her partner, Steele, who is also an amazing guitar player. And to Dave's right is John Maxwell, who is actually probably familiar to most of you here in Washington. John is a master slide player who's been working in the business for quite some time. And to John Maxwell's right is Tom Mitchell, who is here teaching swing guitar. And these four artists will be sharing some stories about their life and their working in the music, and especially with blues. So I'll start with you, Shari. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, you know, how you got into this music? And
Sure. So I started playing guitar when I was really young. I was about 4 when I picked it up. And then when I was in high school, which was the early 70s, I had an English teacher that had been in college during the time of the sort of folk blues revival. He'd been at Newport. And he gave me a bunch of records. He gave me Elizabeth Cotton. He gave me Kerner, Ray, and Glover. He gave me Mississippi John Hurt. And that was pretty much it for me. From the time I heard those people, I've just been after it. And I was lucky that at that point, my guitar playing, I could figure some of the stuff out. I had been playing for a number of years already. And so then I continued playing, and I eventually moved up to college, and I met a great harmonica player in Ann Arbor, where I live, named Peter Magcat Ruth, and I backed him up for a really long time. And that was a wonderful time because I was able to meet a lot of musicians on the road and on tours that we were part of. And during that time, I also met my husband, who was in his own band, and every once in a while we would be in the same city at the same time and we could play together. And then for our 20th anniversary, we decided to make a CD of the two of us. And we loved it. And so we just decided, okay, that's it. We're going to work together now.
nice.
So that's kind of that.
In Ann Arbor, you had the Blues Fest.
Yeah.
Did that affect you in any way?
Hugely.
Yeah, I was gonna...
Hugely.
Yeah, okay.
It still shocks me who was there.
Yeah.
It still shocks me. We're having a big, I mean, everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody, you name it, they were there.
Yeah.
I can't even say one person because I would miss 18 of my heroes. We're having a big construction boom in Ann Arbor, and I'm terrified that that field, which is hallowed ground for me, that Howlin' Wolf was there.
Right.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I just don't want that to get built on.
Yeah. The development stuff, well, that's another story.
Yeah, it's a long story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like sort of shocking, you know, when you're that young and you see everybody, you think it's kind of, this must be normal.
Yeah.
But, you know, now I understand that to have them all there, those 3 years in a row. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was really special.
Yeah.
So Dave, similarly, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into music and started out.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, which is not a hotbed of blues. So just to clear things up from the beginning. But I always liked music. And my mom was a church lady, so I started singing in the church, whether I wanted to or not. Mm-hmm. And then I got into playing band instruments in high school, you know, like I started with trombone and I was horrible because I never practiced. And then they demoted me to play the tuba, which was a totally cool instrument, but I didn't realize it when I was in high school. But I loved guitar, so I was listening. I, you know, grew up went to school in the 60s and 70s and high school. And there was such great music on the radio.
Yeah.
And that's what I was, just really got into. And then my mom, who was not sure about me playing the guitar, still, she got me guitar lessons. And I got really lucky. I got a guitar teacher who knew how to play blues. I didn't even know what blues was when I was a teenager, aside from I heard it on the radio, but it didn't mean anything to me. And he taught me how to play fingerstyle blues, and my first really great blues experience was learning Rocky Road by Dave Van Ronk. So kind of went similar to Shari. I went to college, and it was like, oh, all these records, Reverend Gary Davis and Blind Blake, and I also really loved electric blues. And as Shari said, I had an electric blues band. Well, I had more than one electric blues band over the years, but I moved to Ann Arbor in 1991 and started a band that lasted not quite 10 years. But we toured all over US and Canada. And of course, I met Shari in that time too, and we hit it off. And but I love electric blues. I love acoustic blues. It's all just great music to me, and I feel lucky to play guitar and keep learning about the music. And I just want to keep going. That's all.
Oh, thank you. That's great. And it's interesting. People reference where they're from to me, and it's like Mississippi is that. It's the place a lot of people reference as the birth of the blues. However, I, being of the same generation as you, feel like the neat thing about that music was it came about when the technology made it possible to move around. You didn't have to be in Mississippi, you know what I mean, the old Victrolas, all of that. It was an interesting coincidence that these things came together, you know, turn of the century, and so it's great. I'm glad it got everywhere, you know, it got all over the world. So, John, similarly, tell us a little bit about your beginnings.
I grew up in Chicago for the most part, moved away a couple of times, but many years in Chicago. My older brother, Steve, who's also here this week, he's 6 years older. He started getting into blues while we were in Chicago. When he was a teenager, he was old enough to get down to Maxwell Street and hear that whole scene. And then he was, I think, sneaking into clubs probably. But his interest in that kind of pulled me in. Then when I started to learn guitar, I was about 15. I went to the Old Town School of Folk Music. Which is, I believe, the oldest school in the country. I may be wrong about that. But great music school. I remember my first class was just a folk strumming class. They were doing like Go Tell Aunt Rhody or something like that, which was fine for learning chords. On the way out, I heard the sound of a slide on a national guitar being played, and it was like, whoa. What was that? And it was a guy named Johnny Long, who still performs around the country. Great, great player. And I just knew at that moment, that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
So I only took about 6 classes from him because my family moved to Tulsa right after that, which is, like you said, not a hotbed of blues in Tulsa.
But it's a music town.
There's a great music town.
Yeah, there's some good music.
And the history there is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So kept learning through that period, ended up in St. Louis, going to college. I had a great opportunity to meet Henry Townsend one night when I was playing in a bar in St. Louis, BB's Jazz Blues and Soups, which I think still is there.
It does. It is.
Somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Henry's upstairs if you want to meet him." I was like, "Yeah." Went upstairs and introduced myself to Henry, and he goes, "We should get together and play sometime." And I said, "I would love to do that." And he says, "Well, I'm not kidding." I said, "I'm not either." And he said, "Okay, come on over to the house tonight." So that very night, went back to Henry's house, played with him for a couple of hours, looked at his stack of 78s, which he had started recording in 1929.
Yeah.
He recorded in 9 decades, I think.
Wow. Yeah, he was a long-lived guy, yeah.
Had a chance to play with him a little bit. His wife made us breakfast in the morning. It was one of my best memories ever. And then I ended up getting sidetracked in San Francisco. I actually played in a punk band for 5 years. But I always came back to acoustic blues because it's the thing that really touches me.
Yeah.
And then when I found Centrum, my first year, I think, was 2009, maybe. And I came here.
It's okay, man.
So anyhow, that stuff just comes up.
Yeah.
No doubt.
The community. And the sense of home that you get here.
Yeah.
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 Like-minded souls.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is it. I should have been doing this all along.
Yeah.
And still
Did you ever
passionate
get
about
to
it.
like play with Tampa Red much?
I never met Tim. I think I was a little too young for that. He was still alive when I was learning, but I believe he was in a care facility in Chicago at that point. I would love to have met him though.
Yeah.
Tampa Red's one of my all-time
I
favorites.
would be like, I know somebody who met him.
I'm sorry I can't provide that to you.
Ding.
So, Tom, similarly, tell us a little bit about your background and getting started with music,
Well, it's a little bit different than everybody else's. I
which
mean,
is good.
I guess I started playing guitar when I was 12 or 13, and I was just like a regular preteen and teenager where I was just like learning stuff that I was hearing on the radio or the records we were rock and roll, some of it. And somewhere in there, pretty early, I heard some of those David Bromberg records where I got to hear traditional American music and some bluesy sounding stuff, and I really kind of gravitated toward that. And I actually started playing sort of fiddle tunes, playing flat picking fiddle tunes and playing in square dance bands and stuff like that. And somewhere along the way, in the middle of all that, I started listening to some like Western swing stuff and blues. And I had a friend that was really, you got to listen to this. You got to listen to, he sent me the Robert Johnson record. He started giving me all that stuff. So that's my sort of early connections to the blues. And then I started collecting 78s. And so that, of course, that's the kind of stuff you look for most of the time. I ended up playing a lot of, like I said, square dances and stuff. And then I got into I would call it a sort of a Western swing band, sort of, and we traveled around mostly just going into bars and said, hey, we'll play some tunes if you give us some beer. And then from there, I ended up joining a group with 3 women vocalists and playing a bunch of swing stuff and sort of learning that as I went along and bringing material to the band with, from my collection and at that time also I was listening to like a lot of later 50s R&B, like that, and still listening to a bunch of Western swing, and I finally ended up in like a Western swing / Hawaiian rockabilly band.
Yeah, it's really fun.
And we played anything we wanted to. No, there wasn't punk involved. It was great. And then finally, because of my sort of involvement in all this different kinds of music, I ended up, I toured for a while with Dan Hicks and the Hot Licks for about 10 years. And then in coming home and playing with that band, and then at home I'm in a band called the Blue Rhythm Boys, which is kind of like we play, my partner fingerpicks guitar a lot, and we play a lot of like, just acoustic blues stuff and swing, and we mix it up. I did get to go to a lot of festivals out east. I got to meet Libba.
Libba Cotton?
Listen to her, yeah. She was so sweet. She was really nice to me because I was like, And she was just, sit down. And anyway, and I'm just kind of keep doing that. I feel a little bit overwhelmed by how deep some of the roots go here with the players. And, I hang on the best I can. But I first came to Centrum here for fiddle tunes, like 25 years ago or 30 years ago. And I came 2 or 3 times and just loved it here. I love the people. And like you said, it's community. It feels really good to be here. Yeah.
I can't think of another place like it.
No.
And Tom, you didn't mention where geographically you started out.
What's kind of mixed. I never lived much further than like 3 hours away from where I was born for a long time, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
But my mom's family, and where I started playing a lot of music, especially the traditional American music, is from like Western Maryland, in the mountains in Western Maryland.
Yeah, this is some rich stories here, and I love that you shared especially how gracious some of the I'm trying to think of a word to describe them, but some of the original, I guess, is original as good as any, the original blues people are with their knowledge. And just as I've had similar experiences. I've worked on the Smithsonian Folk Festivals when I was a teenager as a volunteer, and just always blew my mind how, even as a teenager, these guys would come up and just like, yeah, hang with us, you can hang with us. And would, what I would call, I basically got the volunteer badge, and I'd stick with Sam Chapman was there one year, and I just said, Sam, I will tune your guitar, I will change strings, just don't let them, send me to do some other task.
You need me.
You need me. And later
You were
I
Sam
realized-
Chapman's tech.
Yeah, I was his tech, and I didn't even know the word back then. I didn't have the concept, but I was a guitar tech. I did it for Sam, I did it for Hound Dog Taylor, and a couple others that I can't remember, but Hound Dog was very memorable because I was underage and I had to take him to a liquor store. So they basically said, get in the car, They pulled into D.C. and it was like, where's the liquor store? I said, I know, get in the car. First thing. We were
Priorities.
yeah, priorities. So this is rich. What can you tell us about now, Tom? Not Tom. I'm sorry, John. You mentioned how much this community means to you, and I get it. It really is. This is unique. It's special. I mean, there are other camps, as you know, or other centers around the country that do something similar to this, but not quite like Centrum does it. And so I'd like to open it up to maybe share with some of our audience how you feel about working here, and has it impacted you, and how maybe the teaching, anything you've gotten from the experience here. And you can talk amongst yourselves or...
That's a big question.
It is. We got time.
Yeah, I was thrilled. I got to teach one class in 2017. That was my first experience here. So I was thrilled to come back this year. It's a really interesting process for me. I've enjoyed watching instructors over the years and how they present material, and learning that the best players aren't necessarily the best teachers.
Yeah.
And I used to teach people how to drive buses, so I had a certain amount of teaching background. Oddly enough, I could apply to it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I hope what I'm presenting is, lost my train of thought there. I'm trying to break it down in a way, and it's interesting to me. I'm so used to just playing solo. If I'm teaching somebody else something particular, I've got to completely break down what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And what happens every day this week, I'm just playing the song for people at the initial part of the class, and somebody will say, "What was that note that you did about 2/3 of the way through there?" And I'm like, I really don't know. It just kind of ended up in there.
Yeah.
But I love presenting the improvisational aspects around the framework.
Right.
So it never, for myself, I don't ever play it exactly the same twice. Can show it to the class 2 or 3 times, and it's going to be a little bit different each time. But I like the movement of that. I think it's really cool.
It's important too, because a lot of artists, as you know, didn't always play. I mean, that's to my mind, another thing of the paradox of this technology of recording. You know, the recording becomes the version. But if you saw these people play live, you realize, like yourself, that they don't stick to that version.
Right.
They, you know, and much of this music, as our really my good friend Phil Wiggins, who really brought me here, has said, you know, it was house dance music. This was, you know, music that people got together and partied with, and it wasn't the stereotype of, oh, it's the blues, it's got to be sad, and da-da-da. No.
I went home after my first year here, and I had a friend in the Bay Area at the time. He said, "You went to blues camp for a week, and all you did was play blues?" And of course, you know, somebody like him, he's more of a rock player. His whole idea of blues is the dun 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 dun. So, okay, that's there, but there's a lot more stuff happening.
Yeah, this huge universe. And Tom, you worked with Phil.
Yes, he's on one, maybe 2 records that I recorded, and it was funny, I was telling somebody yesterday, somebody came up and gave me a board mix from like 15 years ago.
Wow.
On a CD where we I think it was like a record release party or something like that, and Phil was on it. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And I I almost wrecked the car. I was like, I did. I was like, jeez, it sounded so good, and it was him. Phil was just like a force of nature, and always very kind to me, and being around him, and actually some of the other folks that are here, John Tavius, Andrew Ali, Jaron, and Ben at a camp out east is kind of it's one of the things that makes me really happy about being here now, because being with them was just so, besides being a really good time, it just kind of opened my eyes in some ways, and just to sit and just be in the middle of it, and it feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a real quick thing to share about Phil. He was the first one was it the first? I think he was one of the very first instructors that asked me to play with him in the clubs.
Excellent.
I had just played with somebody else, and I'm walking down the street with my guitar, and Phil's coming the other way, and he goes, "You want to play with me?" And I said, "Yes." So that was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And then the moment with Phil, there's many of them, but the one that has always stuck in my memory, he was playing, I believe, with Corey Harris on the main stage. And you know the way that he would cup so tight.
Yeah.
And he's playing probably a low D harp, this low note, and you could just feel the ground. And then he opened his hand up really slowly, and it was just like this wash of unbelievable energy coming out.
Yeah, he definitely had what I just call the magic. I mean, I don't want to get too off topic, but I worked with him as an instructor. He would come to class and talk about his life and play for my students at University of Maryland, and it always was refreshing, because these are, you know, late teen, early 20s kids, and they're like, you know, kind of bored because I'm playing the old 78s and stuff, and then they see a live person, and they'd pin drop, you know. He would do some play, and I'd accompany him a little bit sometimes, but there would be a pin drop, you know, and it's just like everybody, all these kids were like, and I said, yeah, so now you get it.
Now you get it.
Now you get it, yeah. Because they would argue, we have to listen to those scratchy old 78s.
Oh, it's such a privilege.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't know. Yeah. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your experience teaching here.
Well, Shari and I have just been here the last 2 years. Really happy to be here. The thing I would concentrate on is my students have been amazing. I don't want to, I've taught guitar before in a, guitar store and taught some classes when I was younger. I'm just like blown away by how respectful and how attentive, I don't want them to think that I expected them to not pay attention to me, but they're just so focused and want to learn, and they're complimentary, and they give me instant feedback. What if you did X? And I say, oh, that's a really good idea. So I just think they're really knowledgeable students and really devoted. So it's kind of what I would concentrate on.
Yeah.
My experience here has been about how good the students are.
Yeah, good. And how about you, Shari?
So I recently came across this loose leaf piece of paper on the bottom of my desk, and it was really old, and it was at a time when I was single, and I had a roommate, and we were listing what we wanted in men, and hers was like a full page and a half. And then there's a line, and mine was willing. That's all I said. I just willing. I looked at that and I thought, wow, you really had low standards. But, the thing that I find about the students here, they are so willing to learn what you're teaching them.
Yeah.
At another place, another camp somewhere else, I was teaching some Piedmont stuff, and I was teaching chicken picking. And, it's using your thumb and your finger a little differently than if you've learned alternating bass. And they got so upset. They were all like, that's not the way we do it. And I was like, yeah, right, it's good because you just paid this money and now you can learn something new. Here, they follow me out of class and they ask me more questions and they want to know everything I know. And that's the thing that's making me cry. I have a young woman in my class that I had to tell her today, I need to warn you that when I say goodbye to you, I'm gonna cry, because I'm crying already thinking of saying goodbye to you. And I know I'm not your mother and I'm not even your aunt, but just being with you and your willingness. And I mean, the students are amazing. The faculty is amazing. And then the other thing that I find incredible, this is a large undertaking. And we have so much support and organization and information about what we need to do and we need to be, it's so well done. My hats are off to Mary and her staff. You could teach a whole class on how you do what you do, the way you do it. It's that mixture of willingness and heart and solid scaffolding. Like, it's not just loosey-goosey. It's, people are ready. They're there on time and they're into it. So I feel so fortunate to be here.
Yeah.
And then just the other thing, just that you were saying, like, being in a place where everybody loves what you love. You get tired after a couple days, and you sort of go into that satori thinking that the whole world is like this.
Going back is so hard.
This is really great. This is the way things are. And oh boy, do I wish that was true.
Yeah. That's I think something that speaks to the power of music in general. I mean, just not even thinking of genres, just our humanness in music. That music, I think, really, if we allow it, will can take us places and also bring people together. So we have about 5 minutes left, and tell each of you, share a little bit with our audience about what's coming up in your future or what you're excited about doing in the future. And it's really open. You can, tell the audience if you're working on new projects, if you've got tours coming up or whatever. So we could start with you, Shari.
Okay. During COVID, when things sort of shut down, Dave and I started working on a project of making medleys of different genres of music, all root music, but like the idea of putting together a Mississippi John Hurt song like Payday with a Kentucky fiddler, Art Stamper, Josio, and making these like they may have never met, but now they're playing together in our song. And for me, it was about the first time we met, we had this discussion about how odd it is that people love blues, but they only like Memphis blues, or they only like swing, or they only like electric blues.
Yeah.
And I always felt like there was something wrong with me. Like I like it all, I mean, I just want to play all of it, and it was sort of how we bonded because we're both like that. And I think that's what I'm excited about is putting out something that breaks down barriers, because I feel like we need to stop with the barriers.
I get you.
It's not helping.
Yeah.
No, in any way.
It's not helping anything.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing about this place too. They're all, I was teaching something today by Robert Lockwood, and the next thing I knew, I was teaching them Freddie Green stuff. And they were like, that goes together.
Yeah.
That goes together. So yeah.
I like that, breaking barriers, because
Yeah.
you're right. We have, in this nation right now, we've got too many divisions. I'll just say that. So.
Well, Shari said it all.
Good partner.
Yeah, that's no, she really did. We're looking forward to. I'm looking forward to more of what we're working on, like melding, some styles that never were really melded, and like Appalachian music and the blues, and like we see common ground. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm excited about, and I'm always excited about just learning new stuff. It's great to be here. You get so inspired by all the great musicians, and yes.
I like that because, I mean, the industry back then was the reason, the quote hillbilly music and the
Divisions, yeah.
got divided off. And if you went to, where, Libba Cotton or any of those folks lived in the Carolinas, they were playing with everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. The industry kind of made it look different, but
Yeah.
Yeah, the boundaries aren't real.
yeah,
They're not real.
Yeah,
They're just something we did, and we need to undo them.
do them. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but I drove. You're making me think of something because I drove years ago. I had a temp job driving a van for Tito Puente's band.
Oh.
And so I had to pick them all up at the airport. They're all coming in from different places. And it was such an education because I had multiple runs to the airport, and I'd get these guys in the van and be talking to them. And to a T, every one of them said, I love working with Tito. And I was like, why? Horn player, one guy doubled on horn and violin. I mean, he says, because there's no BS. He doesn't BS. We play, you get paid, everything's cool, he takes care of you. And it was he played at George Washington University, and he did a thing with the students there. And he told them, when we're playing this music, we don't see race, because it's like some of the students were like, well, this is salsa. And he said, wait. He said, when I get my band together and we're, I'm not looking at can you do this? And can you do it well? That's what's important.
Yeah.
And so it was just, one of those eye-opening things to see all these older guys getting off the plane and coming from various gigs and just to work with him. It was really impressive. Yeah. So John, I'm sorry I went off on a tangent.
There's two things I was thinking while you all were talking. I always like to think of the story. I don't know if this is true, if I read it somewhere, if I just made it up in my mind, but I can imagine Robert Johnson was not just playing Robert Johnson blues tunes on the street.
No,
He was very likely playing the Bing Crosby hit of the day.
Yeah.
he was playing polkas.
Yeah.
And country, whatever.
Johnny Shines was telling me about it. I had a chance to hang out with him, and he played whatever was on the radio.
Yeah.
You could hear it, and then he'd sit down on the corner and play it.
I just love that thought of
Me
walking
too.
around the corner and there's Robert on the corner singing Bing Crosby.
It's real.
I'm still having a hard time imagining that.
It's real.
I'm continuing to do my solo work, and I love playing with other people as well. I've got a new CD which actually just showed up on my mailbox yesterday. So
Great.
just recorded 8 weeks ago. Did 2 live sets over at Rain Shadow Recording here with some special guests, and I was really happy with the way it came out. Speaking of melding styles together, I melded together George Harrison and Tampa Red on one tune. 2 of my favorite slide
And
players.
don't you think they would love that?
Oh yeah.
Can't you just feel them in the back of you going, finally, we get to play together?
Yeah. There was something about that. I was
Oh, I love
doing
it.
this George Harrison thing on the slide and thought, oh, that goes right into that Tampa Red tin. Works great.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
How about you, Tom?
Well, that's funny. I was just thinking that on a recording we made a while ago, and it was a kind of a swing tune, but we incorporated "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," just the head to it, into a part, which is funny. Well, I've been sort of getting the engine going again after COVID. I mean, I just stopped. All the youngins were still going out and playing, but I wasn't. No, I wasn't going out. Perhaps the one thing I'm sort of excited about now is about, it might be 20, 25 years ago. My friend Kevin Wimmer, who's a great fiddle player, he's known for being a Cajun fiddler, but and a Zydeco fiddler, but he's also, he might have been playing out here with Preston Frank, I think, or those guys. But we made a record, and we're gearing up to make another one, and we've had a couple gigs, and we're kind of using them to sort of go over material, and it's great. It's just going to be me and Kevin and Robert Red, who's the piano player for the Ellington Orchestra.
Right.
Oh, you know him.
These Red Brothers.
Yeah. This Robert was on the first record.
Yeah.
And then Tommy Cecil, who's a great bass player, played with Mose Allison whenever he'd come through town and stuff. And it was just, we've done, everybody, well, Kevin, he was living in Louisiana, but now he's living up north in Ithaca, so it's 5 hours instead of 21 hours, and he's more likely to come down. And the other 2 guys live around the DC area, but we're sort of gearing up to, I hope, to record, make another record with that.
Great. That'd be great.
It's really fun.
I'm ready. I'm ready to hear. So I think we are about out of time here. And I'd like to say thank you to our crew, led by Michael, who's done this great job of documenting our talks. And thank you to Mary Hiltz, the coordinator, and I'm probably butchering her title, but she makes this all work. So thank you, Mary. And thank you to our guests, Shari Kane, Dave Steele, John Maxwell, and Tom Mitchell.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.